were hoping to go to the mall to see my crush, and hopefully they would be there, and being all scared and nervous and excited and giggling with my friends.
That was a place to see and be seen, so you learned a lot of your social skills at the food court.
We were all excited. I remember talking in the neighborhood, and all the moms said, "Oh wow, we'll finally have a place to shop for our children conveniently."
You know, it was so convenient because, I mean, we could literally walk there if we wanted to.
It was the late 70s before the boom. Back then, Plano was known as a bedroom community. Most people worked in Dallas. Collin County didn't even have a mall. That's when talks to build a super regional mall just off US Highway 75 at our southern gateway began. A few years later, in 1981, Collin Creek Mall officially opened with anchor stores Dillard's, Sanger Harris, Sears, and Lord & Taylor. J.C. Penney would follow 2 years later.
Everyone was very enthusiastic. It was more about Plano becoming Plano in a city on its own.
As a youth growing up in Plano, soccer was a huge sport, something that most kids that I grew up with played. And one of the soccer fields we had was actually at the site where Collin Creek Mall was.
We had nowhere to shop. I guess we went to Dallas, which was pretty awkward because we all lived right out here. And I remember wishing for a mall, or not a mall, but for good stores.
There was nothing else in around there at that time. So it was eagerly awaited for development of the mall.
When Collin Creek Mall came, it was kind of the place to go. So you no longer had to drive down to North Park or go over to Valley View. You had something here in Plano. It was very convenient.
When Collin Creek opened, not only was it a place to go shop, it was a place to congregate, because up until that point, you kind of met on dirt roads, or you met at the Pizza Hut, or you had to meet somewhere where you were constantly being run out as a teenager.
We'd all load up in the 1976 Ford Grand Torino station wagon and go from Parker and Independence to the mall and get clothes, shoes, have lunch. It was like the place to spend a day together.
I was 9 years old when it was open. So yeah, we did our back to school shopping there that year. And I went and saw Santa Claus and sat in his lap. And I got my ears pierced at the J.C. Penney's, studios.
It was the mall. I mean, it was like, that was the mall to go to. I mean, there was Prestonwood, there was a couple other malls, but you'd have to think about getting in the car and driving over there, or North Park. And, you know, it was so convenient, because, I mean, we could literally walk there if we wanted to.
Some of my earliest memories would have to be the excitement of getting to go down to the water feature area, be yelled at for walking on the brick ledge curb near all the plants in the water, but getting to go to Noah's Ark and pick out a new toy before we got to go home.
Really became kind of the entry point, if you will, for the city. And that was a really important aspect to US 75, was you knew you got to Plano because George Bush wasn't there. You knew you got to Plano when you hit the mall. And that was an important landmark for where you were.
It had a tremendous impact on Plano. It was eagerly awaited for development of the mall. I was very impressed. I liked it. Everybody liked it. And a lot of people did their walking and stuff inside the mall.
Going into the mall, it was, the atrium just seemed bigger than life. And of course, I was a little shorter. But the atrium was this giant concourse, and there were so many shops at the time.
Collin Creek gave Plano a huge economic shot in the arm, generating big sales tax revenue, which in turn stimulated more development.
The big change as far as the city was concerned, it made a significant impact with the sales tax income. We went from a very small percentage to where sales tax revenues became a significant portion of the total budget. And quite frankly, from a political standpoint, that was the beginning of the process of relieving burdens on homeowners. And
there wasn't any malls north of here. People come from Oklahoma to this Collin Creek Mall, believe it or not. they drew from 60 and 70 miles away.
But Collin Creek was so much more than just another big mall. It became a community gathering place.
We all knew each other, and you knew each other outside of the mall. So not just your friends, maybe, but everyone in your city was there.
Some of my greatest times growing up as a kid was going to the mall. You know, we didn't have cell phones back then, and you had to pre-plan where you met people. And the easiest thing was, hey Mom, we're gonna go to the mall Saturday, tell your friends at school that day, and you would all meet at the mall and spend 3 or 4 hours of your life there that day.
We could take our children there, leave them, let them go to the food court and have a ball, go shopping perhaps and buy a few things at the stores. And then we would collect them about 10 o'clock, and they would have met all of their friends, they would have had a good time, they would have walked that mall and bought little things, you know, little treasures, a little bracelet, a little football, a little this, that, or the other.
The mall, I think, kind of gets to everybody's heart, especially when you're a teenager in Plano, because that's kind of the first place you were treated as an adult. Even if you were just dropped off to run around for a few hours, you were expected to act like an adult, and you were expected to act appropriately, or you knew you'd be hauled in and your parents would be called.
Those memories that are embedded in our heads as children that make growing up so special, and the mall was always a part of that.
It was a community gathering area. So I remember lots of times just walking the mall with friends in kind of those middle school years. Just kind of going back and forth, looking at different areas, meeting other friends there.
Paw and Grandma Millie would come in from Lubbock. They would come visit us a couple of times a year, and he'd always have his big VHS camcorder on his shoulder at all times, anywhere he got to go in Dallas.
Hey, Boo! Poopy!
And he loved visiting and frequenting Collin Creek Mall. And in December of 1990, he happened to have his camcorder with him, and we were able to walk through the mall, walked through what was Foley's at the time, and he got a video of all of that, and downstairs the water feature area. They had nothing like that in Lubbock.
My mother gave my brother specific instructions to go pick me up from softball practice and do not take her car. Well, at the time he drove a 1976 Ford Grand Torino station wagon and was a little too cool for that, so he picked me up, dropped me off at the house, and then swapped cars and took my mom's car without permission. That afternoon there was also a storm that had happened, so the roads were really slick, and ended up going a little too fast down Alma, turning into the mall, into the Dillard's entrance, and spun out. Totally took the sign out. For several years, we were the ones who took pride in the fact that we owned the Collin Creek Mall sign right outside of Dillard's, until somebody else wiped it out and we lost our reins.
The villages at Riverwalk, and you had this amazing water feature that spanned the entire length of the mall with fountains that shot all the way up to the glass ceilings. There was a main stage where we had concerts and fashion shows and community events. There were even reports of people having wedding receptions at the mall. So it was just, you know, that kind of a special place.
I worked as a cashier for a little while until Loss Prevention said they had an opening, and I had mentioned that in high school, they didn't realize I was in high school, but I mentioned I was a intern in the probation department. But it was through high school, they didn't realize that. So it wasn't for a few months until I got my first couple apprehensions and somebody saw my date of birth that they realized I was only 17.
Perhaps the first sign of trouble came in 2006 when Mervyn's closed. Then consumer shopping habits started changing. Malls were being redeveloped with a combination of stores, restaurants, and places to live, a concept we now call mixed use. Dillard's closed in 2014, followed by Macy's 3 years later, and Sears after that.
The decline, I think, sneaked up on all of us. I think we probably took them all for granted, even though maybe we did go to other places, those specialty places that had grown up other parts of our general area.
When you walked in there, it still was Collin Creek Mall, but there wasn't a lot of people. I mean, it just seemed like it was dwindling. And it was pretty inevitable that they needed to make a change.
When the mall was going through the closing, and when we started to close our mall doors, and there were a lot of customers that would come in. They were walking the mall, taking pictures. Whenever it was, everything was closing down, they would come up to the mall doors. They would be taking pictures, and you would just hear them reminiscing over their childhood or bringing their children in here.
After 10, 12 years, the Stonebriar Mall opened in Frisco. That took a lot of the West Plano traffic. It's easier to go north than go east at that time. Eventually you had Firewheel open over in Garland. Eventually you had the shops of Willow Bend open. So you have the change in how retail was at that time, coupled with the increased competition.
I went to Macy's and I said, is it true that I've heard that the mall is going to close? And they said, yes, it is. And I said, oh my gosh, I cried. Now that's crazy because part of my life was going away.
With the mall in steady decline, everyone seemed to anticipate its closing. It seemed inevitable. In 2018, Centurion American bought Collin Creek, planning an exciting billion-dollar redevelopment. With the writing on the wall, nostalgia filled the air. People came together to share their stories and fond memories of what seemed like an old friend.
I live and breathe on Facebook. It's kind of a bad habit, but it's what I do. There's several groups on about Plano history and nostalgia, and in one of those groups someone had started a thread conversation about the mall, and it just took off. There were like thousands, hundreds and hundreds of comments, and I was like, this is just too much for one thread. It looks like we need a page just for the mall. Took about half an hour and built up a little page, invited a handful of people through the link in that other group, and by the end of the night we had 400 members. And I remember looking at my husband and he's like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, I know, it's crazy. But there's 400 people here who want to talk about our old mall. And within days, it was thousands. It was pictures, and it was people digging up all their old photos and badges from work and time cards and movie ticket stubs, their unicards, their glamour shots and Santa photos. It just went on and on and on.
It's been nice to kind of step back in time and read everybody's memories. I love seeing what everybody else enjoyed about the mall, things that I didn't necessarily remember that I'd reread someone else's story or see a picture that would trigger something for me, and it would do nothing but ever bring a smile to my face, which was really neat.
Everybody wanted to have a party. We had talks of people just storming the mall by the hundreds and just showing up and saying, hey, what can 3 security guards do if hundreds of people show up? Nothing, not really. Then we had bands wanting to play, and we had people who wanted to open up restaurants, and it was just insane. And the word got out to, I believe, to Sean Terry at a mayoral event in Salina, and he said, I love the mall. Yeah, we'll throw a party. Let's throw a party. Centurion America throws the most amazing party right there in Collin Creek Mall.
I'm surprised the number of people that are here, but also from day one we met with the first HOA next door. They were passionate about it. They told us what they wanted, and they were glad to see us here. And as I said, it's been a great experience so far.
We took a lot of pictures. We ran into people we haven't seen forever. And I just thought it was a really nice event and very thought of, and allowed the community to have another experience and to remember their memories. And I thought that was brilliant.
It was interesting being there the very last day, down to the last 10 minutes that the mall was open, and knowing that where my grandparents, who are now no longer here, had walked and shopped, and we had made so many trips and so many memories and so much fun there, that it was closing and going to be gone. But then again, double-edged sword. It's going to be revitalized and it's going to come back to life, and my kids are excited that they're going to get to, they keep saying, well, it's going to be new. We're going to have a new mall to go to. So it's going to be exciting and fun to be able to visit it once it comes back around.
Before the demolition began, efforts were made to save the colorful mosaics at the old Sanger Harris. The new developer listened, but it wasn't meant to be.
We went in and we had our architect look into it. We had different engineers that came in. We tried to source some of the tile that was like it and find it in case we couldn't take it off. But once they came in and did the asbestos inspection, and they found all those areas had asbestos, so there's no way to separate that without knowing if there's asbestos in those tiles. What we were able to do was we were able to source some of the tiles that we were able to find. So what our plans are is we're not going to be able to have a big mural like that, and we're as heartbroken as a lot of people. We know that was kind of the staple of the mall. When you drove up, you saw that mosaic, and it was really passionate for a lot of people, and we understand that. And so we're going to be able to recreate some of that. It won't be exactly to the inch of how it looked outside, but we're going to be able to recreate some of those spots throughout the mall.
The transformation is underway. Collin Creek Mall will become Collin Creek, a bustling, pedestrian-friendly community of shopping, restaurants, homes, and much more. 4 decades of fond memories will make way for new ones, and what's being billed is one of the premier revitalization projects in Texas.
It's important to remember that the mall is not being replaced. We are selectively removing the big boxes, we are remodeling the existing core, and then we're building around it.
Our goal is to bring back new, but also respect the old and combine those together. So if you walk in that mall, as somebody like you and me who grew up going to that mall, you'll remember walking through those archways going, this feeling seems familiar, but then adding all the new nuances to it that makes it say, man, the back to the future, so to speak. You can go back at some of it, but then here's the future, and combining both of those, that's one of our main goals that we're trying to achieve.
With all the changes, one past anchor will still be around. JCPenney will open a new store at the revitalized Collin Creek.
This is the only store that JCPenney's has ever had in Plano. Just keeping this store around is very important for the company, very important for this customer that is here. We just want to make sure that we can stick around because they've been shopping with us for a long time. We've got associates that have been working in the store since it opened. We've got associates that have been here for 40+ years. So a lot of loyalty within this community.
A lot of attention has been paid to the Collin Creek Mall and the mall experience and the retail and what we're doing with the restaurants. But it's important to remember that we're creating a community, and the majority of the site will actually be residential. And that's how we're trying to revive the overall development.
I think Collin Creek had a ton of potential and viewed as a great opportunity and a great resource in a great location. And finding a way to bring back some of that vibrancy to that area as a project was something that I think everybody in Plano wanted to see something happen.
Collin Creek Mall was awesome. It allowed us to ignore the stress of being immigrants, isolate and bored. I loved my butterfly dangly ring, a James Avery gift from Mom, my first of many treasured and sentimental charms. My friends and I would meet up in 6th and 7th grade. We'd hang out and shop for hours. We thought we had it made. Learned all about makeup with Clinique. At Dillard's I sat to be taught. I felt like a princess when I left. I should have with how much I bought. I then worked at JCPenney, GNC not long after that. With so many years at Collin Creek Mall, I was an official mall rat. Didn't see the mall near as much when I married and moved away. But a special place it will always be. The memories forever will stay. Took my 3 boys to see it. Amazing Jake's was a treat. But Collin Creek Mall was not the same, just wasn't quite as neat.
There was a hometown feel, a center of life about Collin Creek Mall that makes it unique, that makes it special in our lives.
It's bittersweet because you almost feel like those memories are going with it, you know, and that a big part of your life is being hit by a wrecking ball, and it sort of kind of brings it home to you.
It just happened to be the right thing at the right time in the economy. And I think we all profited by it at that particular time. And it begat a lot of other important things.
But Collin Creek Mall was something that brought us all together from the day it was built, and they had a giant welcoming party, and it launched a success, it maintained a success, And I still don't see it that it ever demised. It wasn't a send-off for a building. It was paying homage to an era of almost 40 years of connecting a community and a celebration of the continuation of doing so.